Joining me now to get into a whole lot of other issues dominating news today, PR Council's Christy McSweeney and the Australian's media writer, Sophie Elsworth. Well, ladies, great to have you on the program. It's an all-star panel of women tonight. It doesn't surprise me. This study making headlines all day, Children's Online Habits, shows that many Australian boys are spending 6 to 9 hours a day gaming online. That's having a pretty detrimental effect on their learning. The most popular online game for boys is called Fortnite, introduced 5 years ago. And since that time, we've seen a real steady decline in boys' literacy. And Sophie, this is a huge concern, particularly given the global league tables of how hard Australia has fallen in our literacy and numeracy.
That's right, Peter. I think this is a real concern. And the fact that the Apple iPhone came out when NAPLAN started, and this is the lowest levels that it's been at in Australia, I think this is really concerning. And there's also some duty on parents as well at home to control their use of their kids on these devices. But it's a hard thing to do in this day and age, given that we're all, adults and kids addicted to our devices. But this is a real concern that it's impacting these important skills they need in their lives.
Christy, I'll bring you in here because I don't have children. I have lots of nieces and nephews. Some families I know are pretty tough on the use of phones. Others use it as a bit of a babysitting device. I go out for dinner and I watch people sit around a table and even mum and dad are on their devices. They're not even having a conversation. I think it's not just schools that have got to fix this problem. It's got to be families, particularly parents.
It's a holistic view, and I'm with you, Peter. I don't have children either, but it doesn't even need to be children. There are adults in the world today who don't know anything else apart from devices as soon as they could see and use their fingers. They have grown up using that, and as Sophie said, the Year 9 boys' results are the worst in Australia they've ever been. It's really scary in terms of the skills teenagers are losing due to these devices and the time they've spent on them. But I've worked really closely with psychologists that deal with how these devices and fights around trying to limit the time of these devices in the home actually affects family life, and it is devastating. I've seen some terrible footage of kids absolutely going nuts when parents are trying to limit their screen usage.
I grew up in an age where if we were naughty, Dad would just unplug the TV and that was the end of it, but very different these days. ABS statistics, census data out today, says Queensland's had a net gain of more than 100,000 people in the 5 years to 2021. Doesn't surprise me, they're all moving up there. There's been about 100,000 lost out of New South Wales. That tells me something. I think it's getting too expensive for people to live in and around New South Wales, particularly Sydney. But Sophie, we're also seeing we had migration outside of Melbourne in particular after lockdowns. But Melbourne's holding firm. It's only had a 10,000 drop in Victoria. That surprised me.
Well, this is a real concern. Look, I've lived in Queensland for a long time, obviously lived in Melbourne too, and I can see the appeal with people moving to Queensland. It's cheaper housing, it's a better climate, it's not as populated as the southern cities such as Sydney and Melbourne. But I'm not surprised that we are seeing people move to other cities for affordability and lifestyle reasons. And as you said, we saw a lot of people doing this during COVID, looking for a better way of life, given that we spend so much time at our homes and with many of us working from home. We thought, a lot of people thought, let's move somewhere else where we can have a better lifestyle and hopefully at a cheaper cost.
And I go back to the conversation I was having with David Littleproud before. Dams have been cancelled in Queensland. Dams have been slow to be repaired in Queensland. Yet the population's going up. Let's go to this Property Council data in Victoria that shows the Melbourne CBD still below capacity, 45% on a good day. Gets as low as 30% Mondays and Fridays. Everyone's taking a long weekend and supposedly working from home. In Sydney, though, the rate's up to 60%. Adelaide and Perth, where you are tonight, Christy, you're talking about 75% of workers are back in the office. It's no wonder businesses can't survive in the Melbourne CBD, is it?
Absolutely. In a labour shortage market, businesses are being forced to offer flexibility. But the real reason for this, Peter, is post-pandemic, Daniel Andrews has not pushed the point of getting the city back to work and getting the economy ticking over again. Why? Because it's an election year and he doesn't want to go to war with the CPSU, who have got that flexibility for people to not work in the office and to not be monitored in terms of how many hours they're doing and making sure they're fulfilling their criteria, that he doesn't want to interfere with any potential EBA bargaining with any of the unions, and Melbourne's a public service town, as we both know, in this year. So business owners in the CBD, you're just going to have to cop that, courtesy of Dan Andrews.
And not forgetting, of course, that the CPSU union in Victoria wants taxpayers to pay them to work 4 days, but pay them for 5. Let's go quickly to the UK. Suella Braverman, she's the new Home Secretary there. She said she's had a gutful of these Just Stop Oil protesters. They've shut down great parts of the United Kingdom, particularly London. She's been pushing pretty hard, Sophie, with police. She wants them to be sent to jail. She's sick of them getting off scot-free. We've seen that happen here in Australia as well.
I think this is a real concern, Peter. These people need to they need to come down hard on them, because otherwise they just keep repeating this behaviour. It's disruptive, it's dangerous, and they, get a kick out of the fact that they make headlines across the world. It's appalling behaviour, but unfortunately you can't stop idiots. This will continue to happen until the penalties are severe enough to deter them from doing it.
Yeah, and of course we could have one in the Parliament in Victoria elected, this Green Extinction Rebellion chap, into the Parliament in the seat of Northcote. Thank you very much, ladies, Sophie and Christy. See you next week.